in a contest that has seen American President stake his neck out. In the mayoral contest, Zohran Mamdani has emerged as the frontrunner. In a post on Truth Social, US President Donald Trump warned voters that New York City survival is at stake should Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani wins the election. He said, if communist candidate Zohran Mamdani wins the election for mayor of New York City, it is highly unlikely that I will be contributing federal funds to my beloved first home. Then he said, this once great city has zero chance of success or even survival. It can only get worse with a communist at the helm. It is my strong conviction that New York City will be a complete and a total economic and social disaster should Mamdani win. His principles have been tested for over 1,000 years and never once have they been successful. Mamdani responded to Trump's threat with calmness, saying that what Trump said wasn't a law, that it was time to stand up to bullies.
I will address that threat for what it is. It is a threat. It is not the law. And too often we treat everything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth as if it is already legal just by virtue of who is saying it. And it is time to finally stand up to the bullies that make these threats, not to become the bullies ourselves. And we've seen time and time again that the best way to respond to Donald Trump and to defeat these kinds of threats is to actually stand up and fight back. You've seen leaders across this country who have shown their unwillingness to compromise on their own morals and their own values as the way in which they fight back. And too often what we found in New York City is instead a willingness to capitulate and coordinate. And all of this with the most collaborative mayor you could find for Donald Trump in New York City.
Clearly with a comfortable lead in the polls, Zohran Mamdani is on the brink of creating history when New Yorkers vote on Tuesday as the youngest mayor over a century, the first Muslim and a South Asian leader of the city, and his heritage is mixed. Mother is a Hindu. So who is Mamdani? He is a Ugandan-born South Asian immigrant. Mother, Meera Nair, a celebrated film director, is a Punjabi Hindu born and raised in Odisha. Father, Mahmood Mamdani, a Gujarati Muslim, born in Mumbai, grew up in Uganda, who is a professor teaching at Columbia. Now, both of Mamdani's parents are Harvard alumni. Now, Mamdani speaks both Hindi and Urdu besides English. He was born in Kampala, Uganda, and moved to New York with his family at the age of 7. Mamdani has promised to tax millionaires to pay for the expanded social program. The 33-year-old New York State Assembly member from Queens has focused his campaign on housing, controlling rising rents, inflation, anti-corruption measures. He describes himself as a democratic socialist, which essentially means giving a voice to the workers and not corporations. Now, let me just tell you what Mamdani's manifesto is. Free high-quality childcare for every child aged 6 weeks to 5 years, affordable housing with rent freeze on 1 million apartments, building 200,000 new affordable housing units over 10 years, eliminate fare on city buses for over 1 million daily riders, city-owned supermarkets, department community safety to handle mental health, crisis and homelessness, tuition fee waived in City University of New York system, raise minimum wage to $30 per hour by 2030. Now, let me go across to Zohran Singh, who joins me. Professor Zohran Singh, how do we decode Mamdani? He's fighting against a sort of a royalty, Andrew Cuomo. One part is in the context of his heritage, which is immigrant, South Asian, Hindu and a Muslim. But the second part is also what Mamdani is saying, you know. So my question to you is Mamdani to Democrats what Trump was to Republicans in the first tenure, sir?
I think you put it perfectly. In many ways, Mamdani seems to be similar but exact opposite in terms of his politics compared to President Donald Trump. And President Donald Trump indulging excessively with him is giving him greater credibility in that sense. So in some ways, I think the nearest example comes to mind is Sajid Khan, elected as mayor of London, and then goes on to have 3 terms. Here also, I think, other than changing the politics and administration in New York City, this is already redefining the identity issues, the religion, the politics of polarization. Already there are death threats reported against him now. So in that sense, I think it potentially, it's almost certain that Mamdani is the next mayor of New York. But what is deeper in this game-changing election of Mamdani is how it could potentially redefine particularly the Democratic Party, change the leadership to the younger generation, more radical left-leaning politicians, and also in that sense redefine American politics in many ways, focusing on multiculturalism, immigrants. Already some leaders in US Congress, for example, Ilhan Omar, for example, is another example of Somali immigrant, a guard, security guard, and so on. These kind of politicians would feel much more emboldened to push forward. And then in that sense, the entire politics of America could see some of these voices coming up front. And in that sense, this could become potentially an inflection point. As far as election of mayor is concerned, I think most reports are saying it's already decided that Zohran Mamdani is going to be the next mayor of New York.
Okay. Okay. I'm also joined by Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining me. My question to him was, is Mamdani, what Mamdani is to Democrat today, is it akin to what Trump was for Republicans in his first tenure? But I had a second question to you, ma'am. What does this election mean for larger American politics? New York, it's just not a city, it's a place with a $110 billion budget. It defines American popular culture globally.
I agree with you. I spent 3 years in New York myself, working for the UN, and it is an amazing hotspot of multiculturalism, multi-ethnicity, etc. I think that we should not give too much importance to Mamdani's election, because he is not being elected as President of the United States or as a Senator. He is just the Mayor of New York. And if Trump does what he's threatened, which is to cut off federal funding, to send the law and order forces in to control immigration, etc., there would be a fight with Mamdani, but Mamdani would lose, because Mamdani may win this election, may not win the next election, because if big capital runs away from New York City because of its socialist policies, which Trump calls communist, and I agree with Trump on that matter, because some of what he's advocating for New York City would not even work today in India. Like, for instance, free busing, rent control. I remember there used to be rent control in India when I was growing up as a kid going to school. There's no more rent control anymore. All these are outdated communist socialist ideas. They are not going to work in New York City, which is the heart of capitalist America. So, moreover, let's not also forget that he is Hindu-phobic, although his mother, Meera Nair, who was my classmate in Miranda House, is not at all Hindu-phobic. His father, who's a Muslim, is not Hindu-phobic either. He's a famous historian.
But why is he only stressing his Muslim lineage? He's born of a Muslim father and a Hindu mother. But if you look at his politics, if you look at his statements, it's one part of the identity which is being acknowledged, pushed, and consumed politically in public.
But that may be a huge strategic error, because New York City doesn't consist only of Muslims, not at all. Moreover, when he says outrageous things like, there are no more Muslims left in Gujarat, he keeps saying that. Then he says that if my father goes back to Gujarat, he won't be safe there. Or he says, I won't allow Prime Minister Narendra Modi to come to New York. These are all outrageous statements. We should not even take him seriously, because once he becomes mayor, unless he tones down his rhetoric, he is going to have a huge reaction, not just from the MAGA base, but even from the liberal base, which does not approve of what he says. There is also a huge Indian diaspora, not just Hindu Indian,
okay.
Indian diaspora, who are outraged by his comments. So I would say, I don't agree with my co-panelists for one thing, of Professor Karan Singh, which is that we can't compare this Mamdani with the Mayor of London. I think the Mayor of London is a much more sensible and rational guy than this Mamdani. He's also older. Mamdani is very young. He doesn't have any administrative experience. Maybe 15 years from now, he could be good for a post. Right now, I agree with my co-panelist and with you that I'm sure he'll get elected. It will be a disastrous election. It will bring a lot of attention to New York City. Big capitals will run away if he tries to
Okay.
raise taxes.
So I'll come to the moot point. When people vote for someone, even if when first timers are there, in Delhi people voted for Kejriwal. You have Prashant Kishore campaigning in Bihar, Barack Obama, even Clinton was a governor. So if I say I respect the mandate, so my question to Professor Zohran Singh is, why are New Yorkers more inclined towards Mamdani style of politics? And is there a radical churn which is taking place within the democratic ecosystem, the way there was a churn in the Republican ecosystem where an outsider like Trump broke in? I mean, so Dick Cheney has passed away. And in the previous, I think the one before, I think when Kamala Harris, in the previous election, he voted for Kamala Harris, Dick Cheney. Professor Zohran Singh.
Yes, perfectly right. In fact, it's a coincidence that Dick Cheney passed away today, and his name perhaps also brings in memories of his views on Donald Trump.
War on terror.
And overall, I think there is a certain disenchantment with Trump's politics, which is visible on the ground. And that is partly contributing to Mamdani's becoming such a popular face. Plus, Mamdani is able to use social media just as effectively, or maybe even more effectively, than President Donald Trump is able to use. And he's able to cultivate a certain section of society which is larger in number. You can't have too many billionaires, but you can have lots and lots of people who feel that they are deprived, they are poor, they are disadvantaged. And he's addressing them. And in that sense, I think he's becoming much more visible. But let me also underline that he may be an influential voice in American politics, but I don't think he's going to determine foreign policy or India-US relations in any manner. And that should not worry us at all, that he's going to, in any case, change the relations between India and the United States. He's also talking likewise about arresting Netanyahu in case he comes to New York when he's the mayor. Whether he can do it or not is again not certain, because New York is not just controlled by mayor, but by the state government and the federal government. And then we have United Nations, which is an international body there. So some of these could be election rhetoric also. But what I'm underlining is the kind of ground shaking, the visibility that he has and the impact he has on politics, and how he's then going to redefine the American politics. May not be American foreign policy, but definitely he's appearing to be an alternative. And you said rightly, Democratic Party has been lately for about 10 years witnessing more and more visibility of left-leaning socialist leaders. And he's one of them in that sense. So, President Obama has endorsed him also. In some ways, that brings him legitimacy, credibility. I compared him to Sajid Khan in terms of change in politics, as to how an entirely, unexpected candidate, a ethnic minority candidate becomes the mayor of a particular city, in this case New York, and whether potentially he will have 3 terms or not, we don't know. In any case, the next election will happen after President Trump will be gone. So, fundamentally what is happening here is that more or less we are sure by now that Mamdani is the next mayor. But what is significant for us to understand is how it is going to impact on American politics. The polarization is going to increase even further. Okay. And that should be something that should worry, I think, people who are watching Mamdani's election.
Okay. I'll take a closing comment from Ambassador Mukherjee. Ambassador, America is very unique. You have served there. Cities have their own culture. Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle, Washington. Do you think that it's just reflecting the culture of NYC, that sanctuary cities, very, very specific to NYC?
I think it's reflecting, as Professor Zohran Singh said, a certain discontent with the MAGA base and some of their more extremist policies. Okay. And their lack of sympathy for the underprivileged and poor people in New York. I still remember seeing during my stay in New York that the Americans used to talk big about whether Indians have right to housing, and I used to see so many people sleeping at night in the cold winter on top of the subway heating system. They still have huge number of homeless in New York till today. Okay. So it's a reaction to that. But I don't believe that he is here to stay. Okay. I believe he has a lasting influence. And I do believe that some of his more outrageous comments will be met with a strong backlash by the Jewish diaspora the Jewish community, which is very strong and very wealthy, by the Indian diaspora, which is very strong and very wealthy. And if he goes too far and tries to change, for instance, the New York Police Department, of which he is the boss and which is run very well right now,
Okay.
tries to change it, it will be met with a very big reaction from Washington, from Trump, and from the Mayoral group.
Okay, very well put, ma'am. Thank you. I really run short of time because there's one small read I have to take, and this is on Ritwik Ghatak, and this is my third on point because India is celebrating the centenary of a brilliant filmmaker, Ritwik Ghatak. This year, genius filmmaker Ritwik Ghatak would have turned 100. Ritwik Ghatak has a unique place in India's film firmament. He may have written and directed just 8 films, but all of them are considered classics that bowled over both commoners as well as film connoisseurs. This year marks Ritwik Ghatak's birth centenary. Among India's greatest filmmakers, Ghatak is the preeminent chronicler of partition wounds. His noted trilogy includes Meke Dhakatara, Subhan Rekha, and Komal Gandhar, apart from others. In his 100th year, let us try and understand what made Ghatak tick. He drew his creative fuel from the partition of Bengal and the struggle for the survival of its people. His deployment of sound, his technique, his craft and mastery of the camera, putting two different contexts together. His repertoire of work completely transformed cinema. And Ghatak's body of work is also unique in the sense that each of his films addressed uncomfortable social issues with bold statements and did not hesitate to call a spade a spade. As a filmmaker, Ghatak excelled in his craft, as I said. I would say that he was poet of Indian cinema. Nagrik was his first film that he made in 52 but could only be released after his death in 76, and people still today said that if this film would have been released before Pathar Panchali, how would have Pathar Panchali been received? But that's a debate which has been going for eons. Ghatak also collaborated with Bimal Roy, a great filmmaker, on Madhumati's script, and worked with Hrishikesh Mukherjee on Musafir. He taught in Film Institute in Pune. So it is very difficult to sum up Ghatak's work in few words, but his craft in cinema inspired generation of filmmakers. He belongs to the same league where Kurosawa, Satyajit Ray, and Ingrid Bergman are placed. And this little read is just a homage to a great man called Ritwik Ghatak. And this is all I had tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you and good night.
भारत सरकार ने सभी देशवासियों